Let's start by going down memory lane and remembering the worst leader you've ever been exposed to. So we're going to look at embodied leadership, what that is, what some of the aspects of leadership, how you build them, some unique insights, I think, for leaders of all kinds today, whether that be formal, like you're a manager in a company like I am, or informal, like you're a parent or just someone who wants to influence people. I would regard we're all leaders in the sense we all want to influence people for the better. If your friend is sad and you're helping her grieve, you are in a leadership position. So I take it in quite a broad sense. Many of us are also in, formal leadership positions or may want to be. Yeah. So let's start off with sort of thinking of our own life experience. No offense, but most of you look like you've been around a bit. You've probably met a few leaders along the way. Ileana and I were just talking about bad leaders in the medical profession. She's a pediatric surgeon out in the States. And a lot of people get driven away by jobs by bad leaders, or bad managers, yeah. So often people join a job because they're really keen to be, a surgeon or whatever it is, and then later on they go, "Oh my God, I can't work under this person." Yeah, as someone who's managed many people over the years, I've probably been that guy at times as well. I'd like to think at the moment we've got good staff retention. People tend not to leave too much in the company. Fair to say, Virginia, people are sort of fairly committed there for a while. So hopefully not the case. But who was the worst person? You can name them. I don't even care. Or you can use a pseudonym. You can call them Bob. It's just your opinion, but let's find out why were they such a bad leader? Someone's mentioned a Zen teacher. Yes, there have been Zen teachers who used to steal stuff. Zen teachers who slept with all their students and gave them AIDS. Real example in America. Zen students who have manipulated people for money. There's been, this is in Buddhism, which we think would be above all this. No, because it's full of human beings. So even in, Buddhist schools or definitely Christian ones, all sorts. PhD supervisor had to read his mind. We'll come back to that. What was wrong with the basketball toast? Monotone voice. I definitely come to that. Not very inspiring. All right. I wasn't able to understand that or put faith in practice of fasting above all. Ah, yes. So you've got something that goes beyond their priorities. Toxicity. What does it mean? I always hear that word. People say everything's toxic these days. Letting inadequate people care for bits. Yeah. Oh my God, babies died. Yes, there can be really serious consequences to leadership, right? Whether we're in a war zone or a hospital, where it's really life and death. I've been in a war zone, obviously, and had leadership there. Most of you know about, say, Ukraine project. That was very much a leadership under pressure, or financial consequences. And I was running the Embodiment conference, and I think it was £2 million in debt at one point. And I think it was the last day of the conference is when we broke even. So I had to spend, you remember that, Virginia? I spent 2 weeks leading a conference in front of thousands of people, actually 500,000 people, while going shit, 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 shit every night and barely being able to sleep. Right. And actually, I remember at the time, someone said, "What's your job?" Virginia does this, Steve does that, all the team, they had a big team. What's your job, Mark? And I said, my job is being able to sleep at night. Yeah, that was my job. My job was being the one who it would fall on and it'll go horribly wrong if I couldn't pay back the money. Yeah. We'll come to some good things too. But I'm going to tell you some stories from my own past, not really to big myself up because they're the only stories I know, really. And I think they're illustrative in many ways. Yeah. You didn't see the shit. Occasionally people did. I mean, I had a therapist and a coach and a professional masseuse. So, I had a support team. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't all, I didn't take it all on my own shoulders. Hierarchy. Well, hierarchy is normal, but expecting subservience perhaps isn't normal. Yeah. It's partly cultural how much hierarchy we like. But yeah, subservience is probably not the good done thing. Bad boundaries, pressing very hard. Yes, I'm guilty of that sometimes. Great, thank you, Virginia. Yes, okay. So lots of bad examples. Just shake it off. Shake it off. Yeah, they're not here now. They're not yelling at you. It's gonna be okay, kids. Gonna be fine. Many people's experience actually starts in school of bad leaders. Did anyone have nothing but good teachers? Yeah. Anyone have perfect parents? Probably not, right? So we have some examples of this. Right, now think of the best leaders you've ever come across. Who are some of the best leaders you've ever seen? You can name them. You can not name them. Could be my mum, for example. My mum is a brilliant organizer and she's consistently positive and encouraging. Yeah. I mean, she's got her downside. She's bloody bossy and she's a bit annoying, but she's got some positives. So who is me? That's nice to see. That's thank you very much, Virginia. But what made that person a good leader? Yeah, dream too big. We'll come to that. Uh, what made them? Belief in people, good energy. Yes, that's embodiment. We're going to talk about that. What makes people a good leader? I believe in my mentees, right? Often my job is to say, yay, you can do it. It's going to be fine. You've got it. Like that's a lot of what I say with my mentees. It's really just believing in them. Helping see and cultivate strengths. Yeah. So a good leader is not so different than a coach, right? In the sense they're often cultivating things in the team. So, for example, there was someone in my team who started off as an email assistant. Now they're the marketing manager. They've learned affiliates, they've learned newsletters, they've learned Facebook ads, and I had to encourage them all the way along over several years to say they could do it, give them support, resources, of course, buy them courses and things. But most of it was just believing in them. Realistic, absolutely. Values, newspaper chef. What's that mean? What's a newspaper? Without distraction. Oh, okay, yeah. Getting out the way, I think, is one of the jobs of a leader when people are doing their job well. Mm, my dad, nice to see. Insight, seeing people. Okay, so I remember actually one of my teachers that originally did this exercise years ago. Most people could identify good and bad leaders. Most people have had experiences of both, whether it be parents or managers or whatever. Um, where most people get stuck is how to become a better leader. Yeah. So you ask people what's the difference between a good leader and a bad leader, they could probably tell you. Sometimes the good leader ends up sounding like a mixture of Albert Einstein, Jesus Christ, and Nelson Mandela. So I think we should allow some, it's just this huge long list of virtues. I'm big on virtues. And like the ancient Greeks before Virginia comes in, this is something we can train. This is something we can develop. Yeah. Most psychological systems do not have anything for that. They're more about sort of maybe dealing with mental illness, which is sort of a prerequisite, right? Like if I'm mentally ill, I'm probably not going to be a great leader. But that's I've been there. It's understandable. It's not to be blamed, but it's not virtue building. Yeah, they're not really in that perspective. Um, we don't really have a model of that, I would say, in the West. They used to say in England things were character building, but it sounds kind of old-fashioned now. I was just around a group of scouts in Czechia. They still kind of have that idea. The scouting movement. It's quite positive. In Czechia, it's really thought well of. And I was at a wedding, and adults wore their scout uniform to the wedding. Yeah, because they're so proud of it. They're obviously, I think it has a different meaning there than in the UK or US. And that they would have a belief in it. Some religious people, of course, would have a belief in it, a way to build one's character. But it tends not to be something normal people discuss. I think this is a conspiracy. I think that our culture is obsessed with hedonism, nihilism, and materialism, and it doesn't really want people building character because that goes against, late stage capitalism and decadence. That's an aside. That rant can come another day. The key thing, though, is that we've lost a way to build character. Yeah. So if someone said, "How do you become one of these awesome leaders?" Luck is what people say. Well, I don't know. Maybe my mum was born that way. Well, actually, my mum was trained as a nun for 7 years. I'm sure that was very good. My mum did a lot of volunteering. She was a Catholic nun for 7 years before she met my dad. I should say, just for the record, lest we bespeak the name of the good mother's name. Yes. So, what are some of she had certain practices, and of course, I've had my own practices. I remember I was in the car crossing the border into Ukraine with Pietra, who's my driver, and he'd been a live-in Aikido student, just like I had. And we started this project. We were delivering medical aid to Lviv Hospital, which was cut off from supplies. And the team had really helped us raise a lot of money, and people had been very generous to donate money. So we had this, basically, we had a huge boxes of drugs in the back of the van. Um, and we were kind of looking at each other. It was quite a dodgy thing to do because there were certain laws we were probably breaking. It was quite dangerous. We didn't really know how dangerous. And this was week 3 of the full-scale invasion. So this was, long before normal people went to Ukraine. Now politicians fly there all the time, but at the time it was certainly considered very risky. I was advised not to go by multiple people. And we turned to each other and we said, if we hadn't have done the Aikido, we wouldn't be here now. Yeah. And what we were saying was not that we were like fighting anyone or twisting anyone's wrists in Aikido, but the Aikido training we'd had built a certain embodiment, one of courage, one of self-regulation, one of discipline, one of hard work, one of the different values that were embodied in us. And Pietro and I both have our faults, but most people would say that hard work, discipline, bravery, these are virtues we have. Yeah, and these are virtues, some of which we were born with. Like I was always kind of brave, but others we developed, like discipline. I absolutely was not disciplined as an alcoholic, drug-addled teenager. You know, so that was one I definitely developed through the practice. So yes, we have our talents, and it's important to know your talents because my talents are not Virginia's and vice versa, right? We have different skills, different talents. Yeah, I think one thing a leader does is they recognize and nurture the talents in people. We are not all the same. Yeah. The other thing I think a leader does, as well as nurture talents in themselves and others, is looking for the gaps. Okay. So let's start with the hygiene factors of leadership. Ethics is tremendously under talked about. Yeah. Tremendously under talked about. Virginia, in all the time you've known me, have I ever been sexually inappropriate with any member of the team that you're aware of and you would have heard? No.
Absolutely not.
Okay, great. Am I, or at least used to be when I was younger, a bit of a horny bastard?
Yes.
Yes, because you hear the stories. Okay,
I
but
did.
come
I
back.
didn't know you back then, but I've heard the
Yeah.
stories.
So this is something I've worked on, I've developed. This is something I've developed more discipline with. This is something that I've taken on as an ethical standard, particularly, with students and staff. Like Ileana, I think, can say this. You're in a mentee group for 2 years with me. Again, very few rumors of misconduct. I think she'll probably say. Okay, despite there being gorgeous Colombians and surgeons and all sorts of attractive people in the group. So I don't want to medal for that, but that's just the hygiene factor. Yeah, I'm not saying, yay, great, I don't abuse my staff, right? It's just, but there are people who do. Yeah, there are people in the personal growth world who I've been told not to work with because of this. Yeah, like actively, I've been told, be careful if you send a female student to this person. Yeah, this breath worker or this coach or whatever. Yeah, like I've got a little list of people I wouldn't send female students to. Yeah. Right. So hygiene factors. Another hygiene factor, I think, is just being in contact with. You need the blacklist. I'll tell you privately. I'll get sued if I say it publicly because some of them have big lawyers. Okay. The other hygiene factor would be like contact with reality. So a leader has 2 embodied qualities that are necessary that are sort of opposite in some ways. One is like vision. A leader says, I can see something that's possible that other people haven't seen. Yeah. And it could be, we're going to make an iPhone, and that wasn't a thing until Steve Jobs thought of it, right? It could be, we're going to end apartheid in South Africa. It could be, we need a skate park in my little village for the teenagers, right? It's something that you can see and imagine that other people can't imagine. So it's like other people had done summits before the embodiment conference, but I went, Daniela, like we had 100 teachers last time. What if we had 10 Danielas and each of them was responsible for 100 teachers? Could we do a summit with 1,000 teachers? And she went, nine, she's German. Absolutely not. We will not do this. I was like, go on. So I imagine this to be possible. I had no idea how it would be funded. At a certain point, I was like, oh, we could do this, right? Like there's a way, we could raise the money, right? So there's that, and we did a crowdfunding, for example. And if you're going to do a crowdfunder, you definitely need a vision for something better. Yeah, that's part of what inspires people. It's part of what gets people behind you as a leader. Is this making sense? Have a few more people turn their cameras on. Come on. Don't I don't mind if you're naked. It's fine. Yes. So inspiration and seeing a big vision and seeing something possible is really important. But the other thing is being grounded, isn't it? Do you have friends that have big visions and don't ever make them happen? So it's like sometimes like smoking weed, and they're like, dude, like we should like totally form a thing and like make a studio, and it could be like, we could have like a yoga studio that was also a coffee shop, and it would be like ethical and amazing and vegan, and like there just nothing ever comes of it. Do you like my stoner voice? Is it good? Shall I do the rest of the workshop in my stoner voice? Okay, no, let's not use the stoner voice. We could use the. How about the shit down the Dutch stoner voice, Miriam? The Dutch stoner voice. Yes, we'll use the Dutch stoner voice. But by the way, I used to work a lot with kids. If you want to learn leadership, work with kids. Okay, why? They give you immediate rude feedback, little fuckers. Yeah. The one of the primary jobs of a leader, like a teacher, is to hold attention. Yeah. If you cannot hold attention, you can't lead anyone. It's like if they're not listening. Yeah. The second one is up and down regulation. So a really important skill with kids is like in France, they call it animateur. Okay, let's go. Come on. You got to like upregulate the kids. You got to get them up in the morning. Like I used to do camps with kids. You have to get them moving when it raining or whatever. But you also even more have to calm them down. I'm sure a good doctor does this as well, right? Like the calming patients down who are nervous. They're like, "Oh my God, I've got a rash on my penis. What am I gonna do?" And then, whatever they get. I just theoretical example. I never had a rash. Okay, let's move on very quickly from that story. Yes, so up and down regulation. This is really important. Yeah, so a leader mostly calms people, creams, Ileana says. A leader mostly calms people down. Yeah, mostly. How many times have you seen me do this in a meeting, Virginia? Everyone's stressed. Oh my God, we've got no money this month. Oh my God, this thing's happening. Oh my God, there's another takedown attempt trying to cancel Mark. Still here, motherfuckers. Still here. Yeah. And I'm like, hey guys, it's gonna be okay. Everyone just chill. Yeah, we're gonna get through this. That is what you spend a lot of time doing. I swear, being a leader, you're basically like a group anxiety reduction officer. Yeah, that's like your main job. Sometimes you're inspiring people, you're saying, connecting people to their heart, to the vision, grounded with the facts. Yeah. So another thing Virginia's heard me say a lot is show me the numbers. How many emails were there this week? What's the bottom line? Like I made a mistake in my leadership is that I wasn't good enough at tracking expenditure. I would have made like £1 million if I'd have tracked the expenditure properly from the embodiment conference. Yeah. Made some money. I'm not going to tell you how much, but less than £1 million. Like I literally would have made £1 million had I done that. Yeah. Equally, like the company got in real trouble at one point because the staff payroll got too high. I was a bit too generous. As a leader, it's really important to have us being generous. If you look at like a classic leader in films, they actually only do two things. They assert boundaries and give generous blessings. Okay, so let's take Aragon. Everyone like Aragon from Lord of the Rings? Heterosexual ladies, feel free to slide off your chairs. Miriam, sorry, it's a man, nothing for you. So she's my LBF. His main job in that film is either saying this isn't good enough. Yeah, like he takes the old king and says, "No, we're gonna, this is the boundary." Yeah, and it's saying, "You hobbits, you're so great. We're all gonna bow down to you, giving blessings." So they're the two jobs of the king or the queen in archetypal terms. Does that make sense? Which are you best at? Who's good at giving blessings, being generous? Like you'll often hear me complimenting staff, right, Virginia? So saying good things about people. I encourage that in the company. We have group appreciations every time we have a team meeting. Yeah. Who's good at that? Give me wave. Okay. And who's good at setting boundaries? Who's good at being like, no, these are the standards. We don't do that around here. Yeah, this is how it has to work. Like at the moment, there's a problem with some technical issue. Virginia's all over it, and I'm like, this needs to be fixed, right? Like there's like the firmness comes in. So they're two different embodiments, aren't they? So what we got already? We've got you need to have vision. Everyone do this. Make big gesture. Everyone say, whoa, we could do anything. Yeah. You know, I called the company Embodiment Unlimited because I'm very good at this one. You know what it should have been called? Embodiment Actually Quite Limited would be better. Thank you. Yes. Embodiment Well Boundaried. They were way better company, way better. I learned that lesson the hard way. We're now Embodiment. We do coach training. Would you like some coach training? We're good at coach training. We are limited. We don't do everything. By the way, if you do want coach training, Keck, it's very good. And as I said before, we've got a leadership course if you want more on this. Quick plug. Actually, even the quick plug, right? I could just get carried away with being generous here, but I've also got to pay the bills, right? So I'm going, you know what? I can be generous. I can give what I can give. Like, yeah, I need to also think business. Most people aren't good at doing all those things because you have to go generous from the heart, giving, complimenting, but you also have to be boundaried. It's a different embodiment, isn't it? Try the difference. Do it with me. Yeah. Say no, no, no. And now say yes, like you're giving something away. Yeah, really extend the arms, be generous. Okay, it's different energy, right? One of those is going to be easier, one's going to be harder. It's partly cultural, it's partly personal. Some of you are people pleasers, you struggle with that. Some of you have trauma patterns. Actually, trauma really gets in the way of leadership. Yeah, why? Why do you think trauma gets in the way of leadership? There's a few reasons. Basic reason is it distorts our perception of reality. Leadership always begins with reality, not with a vision. It begins with reality. This is the situation now. Yeah. Also, if you have stuck in a fight flight response, stuck in a freeze response, you're not going anywhere. You don't have the dynamism of leadership. Leaders need to be dynamic, right? If they're like, hello, who talked about the monotone leader earlier? Hello, I'm your leader. I'm really dynamic. Yeah, you need to shut down. You know, you need some passion, some movement. Freeze doesn't help with that. If you're constantly in fight or flight, you're in a sense of scarcity. Leadership comes from a sense of abundance, from a sense of generosity, from a sense of play and possibility. That's the opposite brain state, isn't it? Like, imagine if there was a tiger in the room, you wouldn't be like, oh, look at those stripes. That's interesting. And I wonder what we can do. And maybe there's a different way to get out the building than I normally exit. No, you become very conservative when you're stressed. Yeah. Not politically, but in the sense of, well, sometimes that too, but in the sense of you revert to what you've always done. So that makes sense. You lose creativity. You also become very short term. If you ask a traumatized person, do you want $100 now or $1,000 next year? They'll take the $100. Now think about that in terms of investing. Like I have to spend money to make money, right? It's very difficult in terms of learning. Yeah, learning investment. Think of that in terms of how are you going to relate to your stuff? How are you going to co-regulate your team when you're in a trauma response? When you're stuck in that agitated fight? Very difficult, right? Very difficult. Yeah. If you've got a little bit of fight flight, you might be good at energizing people like I am, but not so much the down regulating side. Yeah. We trust the calmest person in the room. If I walk into a room, like if I walk into a room of gangsters, it's the one sitting in the chair saying nothing that's the leader. Yeah, we trust people in Rest and Digest. There's actually one actor, I think it's Brad Pitt. Is it Brad Pitt? Who's always eating in films. He's always eating an apple or something. Have you seen? Do you know who I mean? Is it Brad Pitt? He's always like eating an apple. Yeah. Why? I used to steal this trick. I used to like eat a bowl of cereal while people were turning up for trainings, right? A, because I'd usually skip breakfast and I was playing catch up, but B, because it conveys calm. Why? Because rest and digest is the opposite of fight or flight. Does it make sense? Yeah. So you're telling people, hey, I'm calm enough. I'm just eating an apple. Same with jokes. Have you noticed in movies the hero can always make a wisecrack? Yeah. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger would always do that, or James Bond will have some wry joke, right? James Bond's always cool, calm, and collected. Why? Because they're showing that it doesn't bother him to be in a stressful situation. Yeah, you like you want in a leadership situation, you want a leader who's just a little bit calmer than you, not shut down, but you don't have to, as a leader, you don't have to be inhuman. You just have to be slightly more together. Yeah. I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again. So when I taught in Ukraine on day one of the training, we had morning was fine. Then in the afternoon, there was a bomb scare. There was an alarm, an air alarm. I can still fucking hear them. Goes off, right? Everyone just immediately tenses up. Now, a lot of people have come to the training from elsewhere, some from other countries, some from, places that were safer. And everyone immediately freaks out and they look and they all turn to me and they see what I do. right? Because they're going, who is this guy that we don't really know in front of the room? Now I'm scared because, someone's trying to kill us. That's not great. But I do happen to know that the air alarm system gives you quite a lot of warning. You've got at least 3 minutes if it's a really fast missile, and probably a lot longer if it's a plane. So basically, you're not really in any hurry to get to the bomb shelter, right? So I take a breath, bend my knees slightly, do what I'd call centering. Those who study leadership with me or coaching with me know that. And I say, okay, looks like it's an air alarm. Let's all walk to the bomb shelter. Yeah, which I knew was in the basement. Okay. I am a bomb shelter connoisseur. I love a nice bomb shelter. My team's bomb shelter now has Wi-Fi. They've upgraded it. Anyway, at the time, it was quite anxiety provoking, but the fact that I didn't panic, I was scared, just to be clear. And they could see I was scared. Of course, you would be scared if, because we don't know how, especially in week 3 of the war, you're like, is this a nuclear attack? No one knew. No one knew how bad it would be. Actually, it was a false alarm. It's no big deal. But what they saw was I was a little calmer than them. Yeah. And I had a response which wasn't panicky. Don't panic. Does anyone know where that's from? Anyone know what leadership advice textbook Don't Panic is from? You should also bring a towel. Also bring a towel. This is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Excellent leadership textbook. British science fiction at its best. Yeah, some of you know that one. Okay, Stephanie knows that one. All right, don't panic. Notice it's not about saying don't panic. Yeah? Which of these will convey calm better? Don't panic. Yeah, or don't panic. Or even, I'm absolutely terrified. This is really scary. Let's go to the bomb shelter. Do you see what I mean? So this embodied leadership exercise, you've probably seen this before. Everyone look at me and touch your knees. Touch your knees. Who touched their elbows? I said knees. Why did you touch your elbows, you foolish people? Okay, so it's a classic example. We don't copy what people say. We copy what they do. So embodied leadership is leadership by embodiment, by nervous system regulation, and by example. Who has small children? Anyone have children? Been around children? If the rest of you been banned from being near children, that's not good. Okay, so yes, if you've been around children, you know this as well. They pick up on your nervous system. You cut children. You cut them for a good reason, Ileana. Let's not take that out of context. You're around a lot of children, and you're very good with children. So you talk to them as well before surgerying them. Good. So if you're around children, you know this. It's not what you say, is it? It's what you do. Yeah, so as a leader, we're leading by example, we're leading by nervous systems, and we're building our own virtues as well as getting rid of the things that no one's ever going to give me a medal for the progress I've made and not being drunk all the time, for example. I was drunk for 10 years. You know that? I actually have the personality of a drunk person. I got stuck in that personality. I was literally drunk for 10 years. No one's going to give you a medal for sorting that out, right? But you need to sort that out. So we've got basic ethical hygiene stuff. If you think you don't, you fucking do. We all have it. Yeah. Then we have building the virtues and the capacity. So that could be boundaries, being able to be assertive. That's really important. Yeah. Having vision is another embodied capacity. Being generous, being caring. Yeah, there's all these things. It's quite difficult. You will have strengths. So not every leader is the same. Archetypally, leaders look the same when we see kind of, your what's his face, Viggo Mortensen, in Lord of the Rings, or whatever. Archetypally, yes. If you read like history or Greek classics, leaders look very similar. But in reality, we have personalities. Yeah. And even if you read the classics, people have different personalities. Sparta is not Athens, right, Virginia? No, there are different ways to do things. So how do we also need, as Aristotle would said, virtue ethics to build our virtues? I think embodied practice is extremely good for that. And almost everyone who teaches leadership has no real answer to that. They're good on the self-awareness front. That's necessary. They might be a little bit nervous system informed, trauma informed. That's helpful, though pretty rare, actually. Learning about trauma will definitely make you a better leader as well, actually. That's true. Yeah. But in terms of how to develop your character, I think this is really, embodiment's really a key aspect to that. So it's a very rough breakdown. My leadership series, if you want to go more into this, goes really into it. Okay, so the leadership package really goes into this in a much bigger way. It's kind of my magnum opus. I think I spent like 5 days straight filming it or something. It's really in depth. And of course, if you train to be a coach with us on Keck, you will be, if you want a live course rather than a sort of do it in your own time course, you'll be learning all these leadership capacities. Yeah. Good. Miriam was pushing her walls to set boundaries. Good. That's the embodied practice I gave her. Did it help, Miriam? Are you finding that a bit more in your system now? Yeah. Good. Her people pleasing video on Instagram and Facebook has had 3 million views. She's now a celebrity. People call her in. Say a couple of people have stopped you in the street, right, Miriam, and said, "Oh, are you the people pleasing woman?" So say, "No, I will not please you. I'm too busy. I'm going somewhere." Good. Okay. So, should you take a breath? Still with me? Questions. Let's do questions. Any questions at all? Put your hand up or put it in the chat. I'm going to prioritize people with their camera on because I like you more. Just going to be honest. You've helped me co-regulate. Chelsea.
Great. Hi, thanks. Yeah, like as a leader, I do think I'm more generous, right? And then the assertive, and I'm also a parent of 3. So I have learned how to set boundaries, but I still am like uncomfortable with it, and I set a boundary. I don't always know if I believe it, right?
Yeah. So
So,
first of all, I'm going to jump in. A lot of Americans talk about being uncomfortable now. It's kind of a turn of phrase. Leadership's totally uncomfortable.
okay.
Like there's nothing comfortable about leadership. It's all about risk. It's all about being seen, people criticizing you,
Oh my
setting
God.
boundaries. I don't like setting boundaries.
Ah,
Even I'm pretty good at it, but I still feel that like Britishness when I do it. So
okay.
I'd say if you want to be a leader, you need to be okay with being uncomfortable, not overwhelmed. We can get you in your sort
Yeah.
of tolerance, but you will always be uncomfortable.
Okay. No, I mean, that's really helpful.
It's it's just going, you know what? And the key thing is not if you believe it. The key thing is do other people respect it, right?
Right. Yes. Right. 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 Yeah. Which most of the times they do. I think I'm able to do it in a way which they do. But that was maybe more my question is like, how do you lead from a place where, yeah, other people are going to respect the boundaries
Yeah.
that you've then set? Yeah.
Yeah, and again, just what people mean by respect, right? So, will people obey you utterly without question? Sadly, not. The dictatorship I want to establish hasn't yet happened. So sometimes people say you don't respect my boundaries. They mean like your people will push your boundaries. Like you've got kids, right?
Oh,
Kids
yeah.
abuse the shit out of you. Kids will test your boundaries every single time. Like when I used to run an archery range for kids, right? Sooner or later, no matter how nice the kids were, what school they came from, one of the kids had been sort of unconsciously chosen systemically by the group would start messing around. Okay. And they would say, hey, are these rules real rules or not? And, the same is true in employees. I have lovely employees, but, if I don't do any management at all, pretty soon, like standards will start to go down. Yeah. Because, they've got other priorities, they've got other things in their life. So, like, absolutely, I wouldn't expect people not to press your boundaries. People will test them. Like, there's a saying in leadership, actually, that leadership is always up for contention. Now, in the old days, what would happen is someone would try and fight you and kill you. And if you could kill them, you would get to stay the tribal chief, right? Like it was like that contentious. But now it happens more like verbally, emotionally, like it's never done. Leadership is never done. So that's just bad news. By the way, not everyone should be a leader. It's totally okay to be someone who's a number 2. Those roles are really good for people who are more support people. Maybe you've seen Helen, who works with us. Helen loves supporting me. She doesn't want to be teaching the sessions. Okay. She loves being in that role. Some people are like the power behind the throne. That's like the queen role traditionally. It's like the leader who actually runs things, but isn't the one in front of the shop. Some people are just happy to do what they're told. Like it's a kind of an easy life. Part of me just sometimes wishes like, just tell me what to do. Like me, there's a fun meme going around. Me as a teenager, no one tells me what to do. Me now, please tell me what to do. Yeah. It's there's a big leadership subby is quite nice sometimes, you know. Thank you, Chelsea. Is there any other questions here? What if your partner who is abandoned attachment styles don't want to co-regulate at all? Okay. That is a big question. So my favorite teacher on attachment styles is Adam Lane Smith. I would look him up. I highly recommend him. I would say anything which totally blames the other person, unless they're like actually abusing you, right? They're like criminally abusive. There's probably two sides of it. There's probably something you can do about it. Yeah. So when I used to do team buildings, the worst member of the team was always the one who wasn't in the room, right? And then if he was in the room the next week, the worst person would be someone else who wasn't in the room. Yeah. So a good question, I think, in terms of self-responsibility is what can I do about this given their attachment style? I think there are some people whose attachment style makes it impossible to be in a relationship with. Most people's attachment style merely means it's difficult to be in a relationship with them. And secure attachment is impossible, and they are unicorns, and they don't exist. Okay, that's my personal theory. The question is, under pressure, how avoidant or how, what's the other one? I always call them cats and dogs. Anxious. How anxious or avoidant is your partner? You know, I've had partners who are anxious and avoidant. I definitely have a favorite. And there's a limit, a certain amount of avoidance. I can go, I can work with that. A certain amount of anxious, I can go, you know what? They're going to need more reassurance. I'm going to have to text them more often. I can work with that. And there's a certain amount of both where I just go, I can't do this. Like they're constantly defensive, consciously worried about stuff, jealous, you know, whatever the expression of their attachment style is. I think it's the same with trauma. If you're saying, you know, what if my partner has trauma? They do. Okay, they're a human being. The question is, does their trauma fucking interact in a bad way with your trauma? Okay, or is there like a mutual healing journey possible? Is their trauma so like there are people I would not employ because of the level of their trauma. It's too it's I'd be constantly having to down regulate them or up regulate them. Yeah, I had an ex-employee who recently actually had really serious issues when they left, and it was trauma related for sure. Yeah. Other people I go, you know what, you've got some trauma, but don't we all? We can manage it. Yeah, like makes sense. Reasonable accommodation, they call that in HR. So I think we can have reasonable accommodation for our partners. In my experience, there's no such thing as the perfect partner, but there's definitely ones that I personally would struggle to be in relationship with. Yeah, it's sad when that happens, and it's a really nice person as well. Yeah, so I think attachment styles like trauma are a pretty interesting thing to study as a leader. Yeah, pretty interesting thing to study. Good. Any final questions? No question too dumb. Last call. All right, what was your takeaway? What was the most useful and interesting thing I said? And obviously, there's loads more stuff in the leadership package, right? The leadership package has got all kinds of stuff on that goes way deeper than we did today. Something we said which was good, which was useful. Here's the leadership package. Why are you doing that? Are you happy with the world leaders? No. All sorts of content on there. Look out there, ridiculous amount of content on there. It's got theories, it's got lots of embodied practices, servant and situational leadership, trauma sensitive leadership. I'm one of the few people in the world talking about that. Feminine leadership, I didn't teach that piece. There are women helping with that. And yeah, it's a good course. Good. Takeaways. What was your takeaway? Building character, yes. How do we build virtue? I think embodied practice is one of the few sensible answers to that question. Being a leader is uncomfortable. Yes, it is. I'm like uncomfortable with that. I'm like, fine, that's normal. Deal with it. Such a poor way of asserting boundaries. I'm not blaming Chelsea if she didn't do that. She's not nearly that annoying. I'm going to be in Texas soon. I bet they don't do it in Texas. Group Anxiety Reduction Officer. Yes, that's your new job title. Shall I have that printed on a badge? People don't copy what you say, they copy what you do. Absolutely. So your own embodied example is really key. And this isn't about like some fake body language, right? If someone has passion, you can see it. If someone cares about their topic, you can see it. Actually, I got this feedback once. Someone said, Mark, I really don't like you, but I can see that you really love embodiment and you're really good at teaching embodiment, but you're a twat. And I really cherish that piece of feedback because I was like, this person, even though they don't like me, can still see I have a passion for what I do, right? Like that's good feedback. Feedback from people who don't like you is really valuable. Not from people who hate you, not from people who like are traumatized and don't even see you, but people who just find you a bit annoying. Good, rest and digest. Everyone's going to be like eating an apple to look cool like Brad Pitt now, yeah? Great. Thank you, everyone, for being very engaged. Nice to see you again, Ileana, in particular.